Hello children, I welcome you all to our English class of class 9. Today we are going to discuss about our unit 6 and it is with the theme of freedom. Here we have 3 readings. Reading A, A Long Walk to Freedom. Reading B, Where the Mind is Without Fear, it's a poem. And reading C, An Icon of Civil Rights. Let's listen to them and understand them in detail. Reading A, A Long Walk to Freedom. Nelson Mandela, born on July 18, 1918, was the first South African president to be elected in fully representative democratic election. Trained as an attorney, he helped from the Youth League of African National Congress ANC in 1944. In 1961, he abandoned peaceful protest and became the head of ANC's new military wing. Sentenced to life imprisonment in 1964, Mandela came to symbolize the black political aspiration and named head of ANC after his release on February 11, 1990. So he was imprisoned when he was 46 and was released after 27 years of imprisonment. He and F.W. de Klerk shared the Nobel Prize for negotiating South Africa's peaceful transition to multiracial democracy. So children, he is really a great person to take inspiration from, and you can even see his quote there. It always seems impossible until it's done. So let's know more about him, why he has to take this imprisonment and what all different things he had discussed in this lesson. Okay, let's throw focus on them. Reading A, A Long Walk to Freedom. A Long Walk to Freedom is an extract from Nelson Mandela's autobiography. In this, he talks about the dual obligations of a man towards his family and his country. Obligation generally means that a responsibility that one has to stand committed for. So here, he is talking about a man's responsibility towards his family and his country. He opines that in a country like South Africa, it was highly impossible for a man of dark complexion to fulfill both the obligations. A man who tried to do his duty inevitably was separated from his family to live a life of loneliness. He recollects his childhood where he ran, swam and rode on the bull's back freely. But with the passage of times, he understood that his boyhood freedom had been taken away from him. He longed for the freedom for small things like staying out at night, reading what he pleased and going where he chose. Later, as a young man in Johannesburg, he yearned for the basic and honorable freedom of not being obstructed to lead a lawful life. It made him develop a hunger for freedom. Nelson Mandela further shares that as the time passed, he slowly saw that it was not only he who was not free, but even the people of his country were not free. So he joined African National Congress to give them freedom and to make them live their lives with dignity and self-respect. This desire transformed him from a frightened young man into a bold one, a law-abiding attorney into a criminal, a family-loving husband into a man without a home. He even says that a man who takes away another's freedom is a prisoner of hatred, robbed of humanity. He believes that both the oppressed and the oppressor are alike are robbed of their humanity. Children, he wrote this autobiography during his stay in the prison and shares a lot of things about a person's freedom, like how they are not given proper freedom and how people should not take away others' freedom and rob them from their humanity. So these are different kinds of aspects discussed by him. Try to read his autobiography and try to get a lot of inspiration from his life, children. Now let's discuss about our reading B, Where the Mind is Without Fear. It's a poem by Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore is one of the best known Indian writers who wrote both in his mother tongue Bangla and in English. He was a poet, playwright, novelist, painter, educator, and musician. He translated a collection of his poems, Geetanjali, which was published in 1912. In 1913, he was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature. He is the author of Indian National Anthem as well as the National Anthem of Bangladesh. Reading B. Where the Mind is Without Fear. Children, please do read the poem given to you in your textbook. Here I am trying to get you the summary, children. So listen to this carefully and please do read the poem once and twice given in your textbook. So it will be clearly understood by you after reading the summary. If you are reading that again, it would be really helpful. Okay. So now let's concentrate on the summary. This poem by Rabindranath Tagore is a prayer to God. This was written during the time when India was under British rule and people were eagerly waiting to get their freedom from them. The poet prays to the Almighty that his country should be free from any fear of oppression or any forced compulsions. He wants that everyone in his country should be free to hold their heads high in dignity. He dreams of a nation where knowledge would be free and it should not be restricted only to the upper class. He feels that there should not be any discriminations or any distinctions in the society in caste or religion or in giving education to them. He wishes for a world that is not fragmented by prejudices on caste, creed, color, religion, or any kind of baseless superstitions. He further opines that people should leave behind all their prejudices and superstitions and they should not let these things to divide them into groups and break their unity. He wants a nation where people are truthful and not superficial, and of course the words should not come out of only their mouth but indeed they have to come out of their hearts. The poet wishes that people should strive hard and reach their perfection levels without getting tired, leaving behind all these kinds of misconceptions, prejudices or traditions, children. He feels that he wants all of his people to develop a kind of power to reason, to dominate the minds of his countrymen. He does not want any one of them to be lost in this outdated customs and traditions, and so he is asking the God to awaken his country into such a heaven of freedom. So children, when you read this poem in your textbook, you find very less number of lines, so it's very important for you to understand the meaning between the lines. So there is a lot of inner meaning to be understood when you're reading this poem. So read this poem as well as understand the summary, and these people are like great pathfinders who actually give us inspirational messages in their lives. So do follow their paths and you can certainly achieve success in your lives. Reading C. An icon of civil rights. Martin Luther King Jr. is the icon of civil rights. Children, in this lesson particularly, Martin Luther King Jr. speaks directly to the people when he receives the Nobel Prize. Okay, so here this is entitled as I Have a Dream and a part of it is given to you as a lesson. So let's know the details about Martin Luther King Jr. as well as the important details discussed by him. Okay, let's proceed further. He was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. Among many efforts, King headed the SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Through his activism, he played a pivotal role in ending legal segregation of African American citizens in the South and other areas of the nation, as well as the creation of Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Right Acts of 1965 was a major thing done by him, children. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo in 1964 among several other honors. On behalf of the Negroes who were fighting a creative battle for the facial justice, Dr. King accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. Children, Now let's know about this lesson in detail. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great man who always spoke and fought for the freedom of black Americans. So, this lesson discusses a lot of things in his view about how the black Americans suffered, and even at the time he received this Nobel Prize, he says that they were inflicted with poverty and were abused and pushed to the lower rung of the economic ladder. Let's understand furthermore details shared by him. He wondered why he had been awarded for peace when his struggle did not win peace and brotherhood. He entreated that a man should use love and not revenge, aggression, and retaliation to achieve brotherhood. The white and the Negroes should create alliances to overcome common problems and live peacefully. He expressed his abiding faith in America and an unrelenting faith in the free future of mankind. He refused to accept that man is merely an unemotional waste existence who cannot influence the events happening around him. He is always hopeful that a man will come out of darkness of racism and war and step into the bright day of peace and brotherhood. He furthermore shares some more details, children. Let's throw focus on them. He refused to accept that a nation needs to maintain destructive weapons to win over others. He said these words as he was always an ardent supporter of peace. He believed that unconditional love and unarmed truth will always have the final word. So it's not the destruction something prevails, children. It is always the faith in truth that will always prevail, and it will be the final word, he said. He was optimistic that justice will be done to his people and they will definitely get all the amenities like food and education and the rights of dignity, equality and freedom. And of course he fought for them, children. This unbeaten faith encouraged them to face the uncertainties of future and fight even the dreaded situations. In honoring Dr. King and the civil rights leadership, the Prize Committee recognized the many men, women and the children who faced the brutality in their peaceful struggle for justice. He accepted the award, convinced of the hope of justice in an alliance to overcome the problems and a faith that mankind would choose peace over violence and life over brutality of war. King was assassinated in 1968 and he continues to be remembered as one of the most lauded African American leaders in history, often referenced by his 1963 speech, I Have a Dream. Children, please read this lesson carefully and try to understand them. There is a lot of intensity that he spoke with, okay? You need to understand between the lines and read this with a lot of interest. This is a part of his speech, I Have a Dream. I hope you understood the pain that he took actually to fight for the black Americans, and he was a man with dignity who always stood by his words. Let us all take inspiration from him and be rightful citizens in our lives. Children, I guess you understood the 3 readings that we discussed in this unit. It is really important for us to know about these great men and the concept of freedom that is discussed about them in our lessons. So we have to follow them, children. They are the pathfinders and they have a lot of inspirational messages shared to us through their autobiographies, poems and speeches. So let us follow these pathfinders and try to be rightful in our own lives. And we also need to discuss some quotations given by them. So let's look into them. Nelson Mandela says, the greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fail. It is really inspiring, right, children? So you have to keep rising every time you fail. And another inspirational quotation by Rabindranath Tagore. He says that you cannot cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. So He says that you have to get into the motion. You have to keep on moving. Unless you move, no change happens, children. Remember these words. And of course, Martin Luther King Jr. says that if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Is it not true, children? Yes. Every time we are having a setback in any kind of situation, please try to move forward. These are really greatest quotations given by them to us. Let us follow them and try to be rightful citizens in our lives. Thank you all for staying with me. Wish you all happy learning, and let's meet in the next class.